Canada needs its own space capability. But it's not only satellites that are critical to the defense and security of Canadians. It's access to space itself. It's why we're taking steps to strengthen our space capabilities so that we can launch from right here on Canadian soil. Simply put, every investment we make in space today and every technology that we develop is an investment in our economy, our people, our security, and our sovereignty. That's why I'm thrilled to announce that the Department of National Defence has signed a 10-year, $200 million agreement with Maritime Launch Services as part of Canada's Sovereign Launch Program.
Something big is happening on Canada's Atlantic coast, and it could reshape the country's future. A major move is turning a remote area into a key part of Canada's space dreams, creating new opportunities and helping the nation stand stronger on the world stage. But the biggest impact may still be ahead.
The decision is we're getting fully back into the space business.
For Defence Minister David McGuinty, it's all about Canadian sovereignty, about eliminating the need for the Americans or the Europeans to take Canadian payloads into space.
20% of the Canadian economy every day relies on one shape or form on access to satellite connectivity. We want to make sure that we protect Canada's security and sovereignty.
So the government is providing $200 million to Maritime Launch Services to finish building a spaceport at Canso, Nova Scotia, right near the causeway that connects Cape Breton to the mainland.
The Canadian government announced a $200 million commitment to a space launch facility on the Atlantic coast. The investment was unveiled as part of a broader defense and space strategy, and immediately positioned a remote section of Nova Scotia at the center of Canada's long-standing effort to gain independent access to space. The funding marked one of the largest federal commitments ever made toward domestic launch infrastructure and represented a major shift in Canada's role in the global space sector. For decades, Canada built satellites, robotic systems, and space technologies, yet lacked the capability to launch orbital payloads from its own territory. Canadian satellites routinely depended on foreign launch providers and launch schedules controlled outside the country. That situation began to change in 2026, when the Government of Canada announced major investments tied to Spaceport Nova Scotia, a commercial launch facility located near Canso on Nova Scotia's eastern shore. According to the federal announcement, the government will invest up to $200 million through the Strategic Innovation Fund to support the development of sovereign launch capabilities. The project is connected to Maritime Launch Services, the company developing Spaceport Nova Scotia. The funding is intended to establish launch infrastructure capable of supporting future Canadian satellite missions and other space-related activities. The announcement was made jointly through the Department of National Defence and the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. Defense officials describe sovereign launch capability as a strategic requirement as military operations increasingly rely on space-based systems. Modern armed forces depend on satellites for communications, navigation, surveillance, intelligence gathering, environmental monitoring, and command and control functions. National Defence stated that Canada currently relies on foreign partners to place many of its space assets into orbit. Federal officials said the new investment is designed to reduce that dependence and provide domestic launch options for future government missions. Defense Minister David McGuinty said the project would strengthen Canada's ability to deploy critical space assets. In the official announcement, he stated, "As global competition intensifies and space becomes increasingly contested, Canada must strengthen its ability to access and operate in space." The Nova Scotia facility has been under development for several years. Spaceport Nova Scotia is located near Canso, a coastal community with direct access to the Atlantic Ocean. The location was selected because launches can travel over open water, reducing risks associated with populated areas. The site has also undergone environmental assessments and regulatory reviews required for commercial launch operations in Canada. The federal funding announcement arrived during a period of increased attention on national space capabilities among NATO countries and other Western allies. Governments have expanded investments in satellite networks, missile warning systems, Earth observation platforms, and communications infrastructure. Space has become an increasingly important component of defense planning. According to Space News, Canadian defense officials identified independent launch access as a strategic objective tied to national security requirements. The publication reported that sovereign launch capability would support military and government satellite programs while reducing dependence on foreign launch schedules. The funding announcement signaled a direct connection between Canada's defense priorities and its future space infrastructure. The project is expected to support both government and commercial missions. Federal statements indicated that launch facilities developed through the investment could be used for a range of payloads, including satellites designed for communications, Earth observation, scientific research, and national security applications. Government documents also referenced economic benefits linked to aerospace development and advanced manufacturing. Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency officials described the project as a significant opportunity for regional economic growth. The development is expected to attract aerospace companies, engineering firms, researchers, and specialized technical workers. Federal documents indicate that the initiative is intended to strengthen Canada's domestic space supply chain and support high-technology employment opportunities in Atlantic Canada. CBC reported that the federal government views the Nova Scotia launch site as part of a broader effort to establish a sovereign space ecosystem. The report noted that Canada has historically contributed advanced space technologies while relying on launch services from other countries. The new funding changes that approach by investing directly in launch infrastructure located within Canada. The announcement also reflects growing demand for satellite deployment. Governments and commercial operators continue to expand satellite constellations used for communications, environmental monitoring, navigation, resource management, and national security applications. Independent launch capability can provide greater scheduling flexibility for organizations that require timely access to orbit. According to information released by the Department of National Defence, the investment forms part of Canada's broader defence modernization initiatives. The government has increasingly emphasized Arctic surveillance, domain awareness, secure communications, and emerging technologies. Satellites play a central role in each of those areas. Domestic launch access provides an additional capability within that framework. Maritime Launch Services welcomed the federal commitment and described it as a milestone for the project. The company has spent years advancing plans for orbital launch operations from Nova Scotia. The funding announcement provides significant support for infrastructure development and operational readiness at the site. Skies magazine reported that the investment is intended to advance Canada's sovereign space program and strengthen national access to launch services. The publication noted that the initiative aligns with growing international recognition of space as a critical strategic domain. The report also highlighted the government's emphasis on security, economic development, and technological capacity. The launch facility is expected to support future generations of Canadian satellites.